Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. We've got a fantastic show on the way. But first, I just want to say thanks to NordVPN, our sponsors here at the Everything is Black and White podcast, who without none of this would be possible. And we've teamed up with them to offer our listeners and viewers an exclusive offer. You can click the link in the podcast description box or go to nordvpn.com/tune to sign up and save your pennies on a plan. It is well worth your time to sign up. You are secure, you are safe, and you're supporting the podcast. Why sign up? I hear you ask. Well, there are a host of benefits. For me, it is the value for money because one subscription can be used across 10 devices. That's your work phone, your personal phone, your tablet, what have you. 10 devices, one subscription. I mean, that is the definition of value for money. The other thing I love about it as well is the way that it keeps your details safe and secure when browsing on public Wi-Fi. So if you're on the bus, the train, you're in a cafe and you're connected to their Wi-Fi, there is always the risk that your details could be compromised. That's your bank details, your passwords, and a load of other stuff as well. But with Nord, you are safe and you are secure. And that for me means a heck of a lot. And look, if you're going abroad as well and you're missing your home comforts and you want to keep with it with all your UK streaming services, then you can click the location back to the UK and make sure you never miss your favorite program. What is not to love about it? It's absolutely fantastic. Very simple to get on board. You download the app, you sign up, and away you go. You're keeping yourself safe, you're keeping yourself secure, and you're supporting the podcast at the same time. And another benefit, and I've already mentioned three, and there are a host of other things to mention as well if we had the time. But the final thing I'm going to mention is a 30-day money back guarantee. So it's literally no risk. If you don't like it, get your money back. But you will like it because it's a superb app to have on your phone. Keeps you safe, keeps you secure. And once again, you're supporting the podcast. So click the link or go to nordvpn.com/tune to take advantage of an exclusive offer for our listeners and viewers of the Everything is Black and White podcast. Roll the titles. Hello and welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Time for the view from the opposition. This week it comes from Dave Azzopardi from Talking Wolves, the founder of the Talking Wolves podcast. He's been on before to provide the insight into Wolverhampton Wanderers, of course, the visitors to St James's Park this Saturday. Dave, welcome back to the podcast. How are you keeping? Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. I enjoyed it's rare that I enjoy the international break, but I think after our start to the season, it's nice just to recharge the batteries a little bit. So, I'm keeping well. Yeah, looking forward to Premier League football being back, I suppose.
Well, I want to ask you about the start to Wolves this season because they finished last campaign quite well. It was quite a decent turnaround. A new manager had come in and that bounce seemed to last to the end of the campaign. And I mean, if you'd asked me who would be bottom of the Premier League after 3 games, I wouldn't have picked Wolves. So what's gone so wrong in the opening weeks of the campaign so far?
It's a weird one because the set of fixtures that we've got or, been given at the moment, it's a real mixed bag. I mean, suppose we open the season against Manchester City, who by their standards haven't had a great start to the campaign, but I think playing them first game of the season was always going to be tricky. And I think we started off quite strongly in that game. As you know, normally against City, if you concede, sometimes you just fall apart, and that's what happened with Wolves. And then the other 2 games, we played Bournemouth away and Everton at home. And I've said for both sets of those games where they're matches where both fans go into it thinking we've got a chance of winning this football match. So I think we've been given a fairly tricky start to the season. Didn't play brilliantly against Bournemouth, didn't play brilliantly against Everton. We lost that game 3-2. I think the scoreline probably flatters us a little bit. I think Everton were better than us on the day. But just strange things like last year under Vittel, we seem to have a knack of scoring goals and being quite solid defensively, whereas it's almost the opposite. Defensively, we have been really, really poor. You mentioned a strong end to last season, which we did have. Towards the end of the campaign, I think there was 3 or 4 games where after our 6-match winning run, we struggled a little bit. Pre-season was poor. And I think it's all just sort of carried on and snowballed into the start of the campaign. I'm hoping this international break gives us a chance to sort of refresh and restart things. But I don't know. It just seems to be a common theme at the moment where Wolves managers have really good spells, fall off a cliff, and then end up losing their job. We've seen it with Gary O'Neill. We've seen it with Bruno Lage. I just hope it doesn't happen again with Vitor Pereira.
How much has the transfer market impacted you guys? Because you've lost some big names. Matthias Cunha probably the one at the top of the list, and you've brought in some players. But looking at the list, it looks like players who've got limited Premier League experience at best. I mean, I looked at the starting 11 for the Everton game, and I have to say I didn't recognise the majority of the players who lined up. I mean, does that concern you slightly? I mean, you might tell me that I'm totally wrong with the lack of experience point, but how do you rate the players who have come in this summer?
It's a weird one because the transfer window has been a real big talking point. There's a lot of tension between the fans and the board and the recruitment team at the moment anyway. There was a big change at the start of the summer where our sporting director moved on and Vitor Pereira brought in somebody that he worked closely with previously in Saudi Arabia. And we thought, okay, the club seemed to be giving Vitor Pereira a lot more control in terms of how he was going to shape his squad and recruitment. But I think players like Matthias Cunha, he was bound to go. He obviously lost Ryan Ait-Nouri and Nelson Semedo as well, which are both very good footballers, but lots of Premier League experience as well. But yeah, the transfer window has been looked at quite negatively, to be completely honest, by Wolves fans. I think it's quite harsh for us to write off a number of those players already, because some of the players that you would have seen in that Everton lineup are either haven't played a full 90 yet, or some of them in the squad, haven't even kicked a football for us yet. So I think it's very hard to judge the transfer window, but at the moment it's not looking too promising. There's just a lot of negativity in the Wolves space at the moment, and it's getting to the point where there's pressure on the club and the owners. Maybe not as bad, but probably similar to yourselves when towards the end of the Mike Ashley era, where just even if the club did something positive, there would always be somehow a negative spin to it. And that just seems to be where we're at with Wolverhampton Wanderers at the moment.
I guess it would have been a lot more negative had your owner decided to cash in on Strand Larsen, and maybe that's what Newcastle United were looking to take advantage of. Maybe that kind of discontent across all areas at the club. I mean, you must be over the moon that the owner did stand strong and rejected what was quite a sizable fee for Strand Larsen in the end.
Yeah, I think for Newcastle, I think if that sort of offer came in maybe 3 or 4 weeks earlier, they probably would have snapped your arm off for that potential money, to be honest. But Jurgen's a good footballer. I'm glad we've kept hold of him. But like I said, because of the pressure on the board, and especially with the chairman made his stance so clear so early on, everybody thought he was going to break. Everybody thought, you know what, yeah, he's saying that in a week, I bet he's sold. So I think he does deserve a little bit of credit for keeping hold of Jurgen Strand Larsen. But yeah, like I said, if that were to happen on deadline day or a few days before the deadline, I think all hell would have broken loose around Molineux, to be honest. So I think he deserves a little bit of credit for keeping hold of him. Look, I don't begrudge Strand Larsen for being open to the move. Newcastle are a much bigger and better club than Wolves at the moment in European football as well. The intriguing thing for me is now how he reacts to it. He pulled out of the Norway squad with a slight injury, so we don't know whether he'll be fit for this game on Saturday. But if he is and he starts at St James's, I'll be really intrigued to see what version of Jurgen Strand Larsen we get.
I'm a big fan. Our viewers and listeners know I've long touted him for a move to Newcastle. I did so at the start of the summer, so I was looking forward to that one happening, and unfortunately, from my point of view, it didn't. So it is going to be fascinating to see if he does A, start on Saturday, and B, like you say, his reaction. But just going back to the players that Wolves have brought in, I guess you might argue that actually every player needs time to settle. And I don't know how many have gone away for international duty. You'll be able to tell us in a moment. But I suppose if the majority have stayed, they've had the last couple of weeks to maybe work a little bit harder, get to know their teammates and the setup a little bit better, and you'll be hoping to see some positive results from that. Yeah,
in terms of internationals, I think Wolves have posted that it was the record number of players had gone on international duty. I have kept a close eye on it, though, because I think it was 15 players had gone overall from the first team squad. But in terms of minutes, a lot of them were having limited minutes, which in one way is good because you're keeping them fairly sort of fresh. But in another way, they're just almost going over to Africa and the other side of the Americas, to not really be picking up much minutes is a little bit of a frustration. But there are some players. I mean, João Gomes and Andre, who I would argue are two of our best players. They weren't selected for Brazil, so they stayed around. And I think, they've struggled with the start to the season. So I'm hoping that, a settled week or two for them will help them out. But yeah, I think Vitor Pereira, I'm intrigued to see if he will change how he sets up after the first 3 games. We've got Jorgen Strand Larsen. We signed another big lad, Tolo Arokade, who's like a 6'5" Nigerian striker. He was on their international duty with Nigeria and scored a goal. He's not fit to start, so I don't think he will start at St James's, but long term, I will be interested to see if we switch it and go with 2 up front, because I can't, Jorgen Strand Larsen, who's 6'3", 6'4", and then Arokade 6'5". I think that'd be quite a frightening front 2 to defend against. So there won't be, there weren't many players there that can spend time and bond together. But I'm hoping at least Vitor Pereira has spent this time to think how he can refresh things, how he can change things ahead of a real crucial set of fixtures before the next international break.
Well, that was my point then. Totally out the window. But it's crazy, isn't it? That you sign all these players and then you play 3 games and then they go off into national duty. Like, how can players have time to settle? It's absolutely baffling. But funnily enough, the other guy that I had also urged Newcastle United to sign was the chap we've just mentioned as well. So Wolves are kind of lining up with my, as I put it, dream / realistic forward 2 potentially later in the season, because he looks like a real good player. I mean, very much a poacher in the box, but if he gets the service, he looks like he'll definitely score a few goals. In terms of the setup you mentioned, how will Wolves approach Saturday on the pitch? Because on the match preview, we were talking about the last time they visited and how Newcastle adapted that day and sat back and absorbed Wolves and then ended up winning 3-0, which wasn't something we'd really seen Newcastle do, especially at home. So how will Wolves come into this game on Saturday?
I'll be interested to see how we do play. Well, I mean, we have sat back and it's been quite frustrating to watch at times. I think especially, since we've lost the likes of Cunha, even when we lost Pedro Neto just over 12 months ago, we've lacked some real pace going forward. So, we used to be a team that could soak up the pressure and get teams on the counter-attack. I think we tried to see it happen on Saturday against Everton, and it went wrong, to be honest. Everton, kept the ball really well, like Jack Grealish and Dye. They just pulled the strings, really. It made it difficult for Wolves to even get close to them. And our couple of goals came, the second goal came when we were sort of chasing the game and Everton were allowing that pressure. And the first goal came on the counter-attack. But it's how we change, because Vitor's sort of played back 5. I don't think he'll change from that anyway. 2 midfielders and almost like 2 attacking 10s, almost like a box midfield. And it's just not really worked out. And he was relying on the wing backs for the width. We've signed Jackson Chichua from Hellas Verona, who's a Cameroonian right back, rapid, extremely quick. He's recorded the fastest speed so far in the Premier League. I think he's going to be a real outlet for us to see how he can get on down that right-hand side and use his pace to our advantage. But I will be intrigued, because I think whatever we've done so far hasn't worked these first 3 games. And Newcastle are a good side, but they've had a shaky start as well. And it's up to Wolves and Vitor to see, can they, continue piling on the pressure. And we need a win. We've got Leeds next week, which I think Wolves fans will be hoping for 3 points from. But if we go into that game still on 0 points, there's so much pressure. And like I mentioned earlier, with the negativity side of things, you have a shaky start after 5 or 10 minutes next week at Molineux, and it just turns into a real toxic place, which doesn't need to happen. So I think whatever happens, Wolves have to try their best to get something out of this game. How he sets up, I don't know. I don't think he'll change shape, but it will be interesting to see. I think those 2 attacking 10s are the key part for me. How is he going to get the creativity if Strand Larsen starts? How is he going to feed Strand Larsen? Because whatever he's been trying with these 2 number 10s just hasn't worked so far.
And I guess it goes back to the point we just made. When you have got the majority of your first team squad away on international duty, it's very hard to change the approach, isn't it? Because you can have all these ideas, but if you've only got 3 or 4 days to put it into practice, then you're maybe not going to gamble on it. But as you said, Wolves need a win. Newcastle need a win. I'm going to jinx it now, but it's set up for the neutral to be a very entertaining game. It's probably going to be a 0-0 draw now. Newcastle have Barcelona on Thursday, so they'll want to obviously go into that game with a win in the bag and start building momentum. But as you said, big game against Leeds next weekend for you guys. It will be interesting to see how Newcastle approaches. Part of me thinks right now they're still very much a counter-attacking side, with the pace of Alanga and Harvey Barnes, and that's when they're at their best. But Eddie Howe wants to get to a point where they control the game, and at home you want to control the game, but I just don't think they've got the players to do that at this present point in time. But it's just about getting the balance, really. If you're looking at, if you're sitting across the table from Eddie Howe and he says, Dave, what's Wolves' biggest strength that I have to stop? What are you giving to him?
I think our midfield too, although it's been quite a slow start to the campaign, I think Andre and João Gomez in the middle, I think whoever you tell me, but I'd assume if it's someone like Joe Linton and Bruno starting in the middle, I think that'd be a really good battle, all Brazilian battle between the two sets of teams. I think that's where Wolves win and lose games, to be honest. I think other than that, it's where we get the creative spark from. And I go back to what I said about the 210s, a real sort of talking point at the moment. There's a guy called Marshall Manetti that we keep playing as a number 10, and he signed in January, and everyone thought he was going to be as a holding midfielder. We've seen him play as a number 10. We've seen him play as a false 9, and Vitor Pereira just always seems to start him. Technical ability isn't quite there, but what he will do, he'll just run for 90 minutes, which for some managers, I suppose, is a dream. But when you haven't really got much quality around him, it feels like we need a more creative option in one of those number 10 spaces. So it'll depend who he brings in there. I think the two in the holding midfield are great. It's what we can sort of build around them. And a young lad, Fair Lopez, I'll be intrigued to see if he starts on Saturday. He was away with the Spain 21s, picked up an assist this week, came on against Everton, and even Everton fans were messaging us saying he looks a really tidy player. So it just depends if he's done enough to convince Vitor to start. But I think in games like this against Newcastle away, they're tough games. I think as a manager, you probably always tend to lean on your more experienced players. I hope I'm wrong and he goes brave on Saturday, but I just can't see it happening.
Well, we'll wait to hear about Joe Linton's fitness because he missed the last game against Leeds through injury, went off against Liverpool, having had a brilliant kind of first hour, and especially with Newcastle down to 10 men. But if he is fit, it'll probably be him alongside Bruno and Tonali, which is a brilliant midfield. But like you say, that's going to be the key area, isn't it? It's going to be that midfield battle. And then with Newcastle going forward, it's probably on the wings where they're most threatening, and their delivery of set pieces as well. I mean, it's likely to be Alanga and Barnes on the flanks, with, we would think, Wissa up top, potentially Voltemade, but we think Wissa. How will Wolves deal with the pace of the flanks, do you think?
So, like I mentioned earlier, I think Jackson Chichu is an extremely quick right wing back. Didn't really get tested. He was up against Grealish last game, and Grealish did well, to be fair. He made life difficult for him, but going forward, Chichu was definitely a threat. The left-hand side, Vitor Pereira hasn't really decided who his favoured left wing back is at the moment. Obviously, we lost Ryan Aït-Nouri, so there's going to be a massive hole there. We have a young Spanish left back, Hugo Bueno, who was out on loan in the Netherlands last year and did okay. So he's been given chances. We've signed David Muller-Wolfer, who was playing in the Netherlands as well, and he represented Norway on international duty this week. But Vitor hasn't really decided who his preferred option is. Hugo Bueno started the last game and did okay, so I'd assume he may well get the nod. And again, I think going forward he's okay, but it's just with Ryan Aït-Nouri, you just always felt you had a safe pair of hands going forward and defensively. Both sides of the defence, still I need some convincing on, to be honest. So the right-hand side with the pace of Chichu, I'm a little bit more confident with. The left-hand side, I'm still not sure on at the moment.
Well, that leads us on to the next question about the biggest weakness that you think Newcastle will look to exploit.
I think defensively, I don't know what's going on at the moment with Wolves. Defensively, we've been all over the place. Like I said, Emmanuel Agbedu in the heart of the defence, in the middle of the back three, was phenomenal when he joined last January, and whole of the second half of the season, he was fantastic. For whatever reason, in pre-season, he looked a little bit shaky, and he's just not started off the season fantastically either. Not awful, but up to the standards that Wolves fans set for him second half of last season. Nowhere near those at the moment. We've seen a little bit of chopping and changing on the right side at the right centre-back. We've seen Matt Doherty start there. Santiago Bueno, Uruguayan defender, came in last game. And on the left side of the defence, Totti Gomez, who was given the captain's armband this year. And again, he's one of those players. I think if he makes a mistake early on, he just affects him for the rest of the game. He can never sort of get into the motion. So it's really an area where going into the summer, Wolves fans class as one of our strongest areas in terms of quality and in terms of depth. And then all of a sudden, after the transfer window shuts, people are putting question marks over that back three. So I think that is an area that if you run at that back three and you spray the ball out wide and some quick passes, it will just tie them in knots, to be honest. So I'll be intrigued to see if Vitor again shakes that up as well. We signed a lad from Girona, Ladislav Krejci, who's a left-footed centre-back. So I'll be interested to see if he starts in some capacity on Saturday as well.
Plenty to watch out for. You mentioned a few Newcastle United players throughout this discussion. Is there anyone in particular that you're fearing on Saturday?
I think Elanga is a good player. I think with his pace as well, he's going to cause us some problems. I think the midfield battle, depending on who's fit and who starts, will probably make or break this game for either side, to be completely honest. And Voltemada's an interesting one as well, because even before Newcastle signed him, we had a couple of sort of videos on our channel looking at sort of sensible recruitment, similar to what you were mentioning earlier. And he was a player that somebody had mentioned on there as well. So even if he comes off the bench, I just think he's going to be an absolute menace with his height and his ability in and around the area. So I think this is a great player as well. So I just think if it is a front three of Elanga, Visser and Barnes, I think that pace is frightening for any Premier League defence.
Before I get your score prediction then, do you, as a Wolves fan, fear coming to St James's Park? Because the stats read just one win out of the last 22 top-flight visits to Tyneside. I know stats are there to be rewritten.
Yeah.
But do you fear the visit?
Yeah, I mean, it's not one of the favourite places to go, to be honest. And again, you say I saw a few stats similar online before we started as well, which don't really bode well for Wolves. I always thought we had I think it was all 1-1 draws, wasn't it? We had a spell off for a while, but you guys seem to be getting the better of us at the moment. So, look, I think I'd snap your arm off for a point now. To be honest, it's not a fantastic place for Wolves to go to. I think with how you guys have done over the last couple of years, it would be a difficult place, regardless of the record anyway. So, this is a game where I just want Wolves to get in, get something, and get out, and then we can focus on Leeds. But like I mentioned earlier, I think going into next Saturday on 0 points would be a real tricky week, I think, for Wolves, and it could be a nasty place at Molineux next Saturday as well.
And do you think the fact that you're seeing it, and it's very easy for us as podcasters and fans to see it, it's a different world within the dressing room, but do you think the players will be feeling that as well? Do you think the manager will be kind of feeling the pressure already after just 3 games?
It'll be interesting. I think the chairman did like a sort of video / interview about it, and he was asked about the sort of 3 games, 3 defeats, and I think he said it quite well. It's like, look, there's 35 games to go. We've been in the Premier League 8 seasons now. There's so many points still there to be won and lost. And even Vitor Pereira, when he came in just before Christmas, Wolves were bottom of the league, and he turned it around. And in the end, we finished pretty comfortably outside the bottom 3. So I think there's plenty of time to go. But the issue is our running at the moment is quite favourable. After yourselves, we've got Leeds. We've got a couple of winnable games in there. But I'm sure they would look at the Bournemouth and Everton games as games that we should be getting something out of. So I think if you get to game week 5 or game week 6 and you still got nothing on the board, I think that's when it starts to get a little bit concerning. And regardless of who your manager is, there's going to be fingers pointed. So I think it probably doesn't help him that people like Nuno have become available now as well, and Wolves fans are sort of talking about the prospect of maybe having Nuno back at some point. So, I think it's just important for Vitor to try and get something on the board and take the pressure off. But I'm sure deep down, he's going to want to get points on the board as soon as possible. Really.
Come on, then. You've kind of said there you'd take a point now. So what is the score going to be?
I think I'm normally really positive, and I can normally see Wolves winning, but for some reason, I just think this is going to be too tricky for Wolves, to be honest. So I think my head will probably say a 2-1 Newcastle, but my heart will say a 1-1 draw. Like I said, I'll take it, but it's quite negative for me, to be honest, but I'll take a point right now. I just want to get us off 0 points and, just get off the board and go from there.
Well, as you said, it used to be every fixture finished 1-1, didn't it? That used to be the scoreline. Newcastle, as you mentioned, have started to pick up some victories. I'm just going to quickly look back and actually see just how many 1-1 draws there have been, because it used to be the particular scoreline. I mean, goodness me, the 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, they went four rounds with a good 1-1 draw. So it has,
Even I mean, draws in general, because we had a 2-2 draw a couple of years ago. I assume you got the double over us last year, maybe. Yeah, I think you did.
Lost the last 3, or lost the last 4 out of 5, or last 6 out of 7. But there have been quite a few draws, particularly that 1-1 scoreline. But I'm going to go for a 3-0 victory, which was the scoreline last time at St James's Park. And that's, Newcastle, like Wolves, need to start picking up points. And I just think new signings on board, there's a bit of positivity and a bit of optimism around the place. And Newcastle have actually played quite well in the opening 3 games, particularly the first 2. And there's a foundation to build on. Had they had a man like Strand Larsen up top, or they probably would have won their first 2 games. So I'm feeling quite confident about this one. That being said, every time I do predict a confident scoreline, we end up messing it up. So who knows? But thank you very much, Dave, for popping onto the podcast and providing the insight into Wolverhampton Wanderers. To you guys watching and listening, do hit thumbs up, do hit subscribe, get into the comments. Remember to take advantage of your NordVPN offer, exclusive discount to viewers and listeners of the Everything is Black and White podcast. Stay safe, protect your details, and support the podcast at the same time. And I'll see you guys very soon.